This section is about one of the major tools of reality construction, and that is language and the stories we tell. So language plays a special, powerful role in the creation of society. It doesn't just describe society and enable us to operate within it, it actually constructs reality. One of the ways it does this is through what we call myths. These are like sticky stories. One example is the meritocracy myth, that the harder you work and the better you are, that the more successful you will be, which is pretty much, it's a very dominant myth, but I'd like you, if you still believe that, have a think about it. So functionalism argues that myths are not just stories, they have a purpose. They add cohesion to our social fabric and contribute to stability. So they give us something to share and all agree on. They reinforce our social norms, validate our institutions, including religions and government and education, and they provide explanations for natural phenomenon and cultural practices. So they serve as a validation of realities of our lives, whether they are economic, political, social, or religious. But they have a work to do. And if you have a look at Wright and Nyberg's article on the work of myths, it's a really excellent one. It's a hard read. It's a 3 chilly read, but it's worth having a go at if you're a dedicated student. Okay, here's another couple of myths. Trickle-down economics, you've probably heard of, or what we will call next week neoliberal capitalism. This idea that the free market's going to sort everything out in the end. And similarly, we've got this myth here that our mental health issues that are rising are somehow due to individuals and not due to the culture that we're living in. So the koala cartoon is basically saying, well, that koala's got a mental health problem, when in fact the whole environment that they live in has been destroyed. Here's the Wright and Nyberg 3 chilly paper on corporate environmentalism, citizenship, and omnipotence, basically saying, what do these myths achieve? Like, what work do they do? What comes from this? A bit more on that there. I'm not going to go over it. Okay, political narratives. Narratives, like, it's a narrative is a story. It's a story that is told quite often to shape reality for the public, to affect our understanding of reality. It can alter relationships, it can alter people's beliefs. Fiction has the potential to become fact, and myths become part of our public political discourse. A narrative, or you could even call it a myth, is another one that businesses exist to create profit. So political narratives can not just be logical, they can also be emotional. So that's what I mean by eliciting pathos. They create value for a person. Like, if we believe in our leaders, it creates value for us because we don't have to worry so much. So sometimes it's about what value it provides more than whether it's true or not. This is the Juice Media. Juice Media have G-rated versions of their videos. If you go on their website, I prefer the ones with the profanity because it's a bit how I feel. So the Australian government introduced a social media ban for under 16s, and the narrative was it's going to help keep our kids safe, and that's why we're doing it. But this this comedic but factual video is basically saying, well, is that really the reason? So this is challenging the government's narrative. It's a critical look. Here's another one. Sustainable development is a narrative. We all want to have sustainable development, but is sustainability and sustainable development the same thing? Well, not really. But sustainable development is acceptable to governments and businesses because it means ongoing growth. Whereas sustainability means a different thing. It means, can we keep on doing this? And be fair to everyone and have a lovely world. So this narrative that we can keep on developing and building and growing so long as what we do is sustainable development is kind of what I call a narrative, and I would critique that. It has assumptions underlying it that aren't necessarily true. Now, metaphor is another powerful way of using language. Metaphors help us understand abstract things like time and huge numbers and mental activity and feelings. So we understand complex ideas in simple terms. Like if we say my mood is up, it is our way of saying I feel happier, lighter, but we use the up down. I'm down means I'm unhappy. But the up down thing is the metaphor. We also use metaphors in clusters, so to map onto other domains. Don't worry if you don't understand that, but if you read Lakoff and Johnson, you will. So let's say we view communication as a conduit, or we name the response to 9/11 as the war on terror. So as soon as we use the word war, that means that in this war on terror that we have, we are sort of morally justified in using all the things that come along with war, like violence and us and them attitudes and anything for our security, and not just what we do to other people in other countries, but what we do at home in terms of privacy, security, surveillance, all these things like that. So metaphors don't just describe and help us understand, they actually create the world we live in as well, and we act according to them. I don't really know that this fits here, but I've thrown in logical fallacies. The way we tell a story, let's say, there are known logical fallacies, and you might hear politicians or other people say gaslighting, straw man, ad hominem attack, these kinds of things. The Dunning-Kruger effect or the confirmation bias is another one. These logical fallacies, whataboutism is another one. These logical fallacies that people use in arguments to tie you up in knots, and it makes it hard to respond. So if you know what they are and you can spot them, it's much easier to respond and just call them out and say, well, you've done a logical fallacy there. So this guy, DOS Discourse, watches a video of J.D. Vance speaking, and he points out all the different fallacy counters in it. So that's a video, but there are many places where you can go and find lists of logical fallacies. Now, these things have been around forever. It's not something new. We can learn from the ancient Greeks and Romans, and their lessons were start with observations, think critically, acknowledge what you don't know. Science is part of culture. So science is also affected by socio-historic norms. We didn't always believe that the Earth revolved around the sun. Let's get it right there. And science is for everyone. So when we're assessing what we should believe, let's do these things. Observe. What do we see going on? Think critically about it and acknowledge that you don't know everything. This is a really fascinating article. I found it fascinating from the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, which talks about how fact checks can correct misinformation. However, because our brains work as a complex system, when we learn something, we make multiple neural connections. And when we unlearn it, we only break some of those connections. So misunderstandings or misinformation can be quite sticky in our brains, even when we know that it isn't true. Interesting, I thought. Okay, and I'm going to combine this next section on culture because art, music, literature, film are also ways that we tell stories, and they're very they're suited to the emotional connection. And this week for your journal, what you're going to do is learn about logos, pathos, ethos, which is the logic, the emotion, and the credibility triad of persuasion. So because these kinds of ways of communicating, not just film and etc., but also any sort of performance, because they're so strong emotionally, they're very persuasive. So one of the things we might want to construct as our reality is a nuclear free, let's say, or disarmed society. And these people, a photograph or a protest, these things are performances, performance art. How effective have we been? The first Earth Day being in 1970, where we said, hey, we're ruining the Earth, and nearly 50 years later, Greta Thunberg sat down outside Parliament in Sweden. Can we change the world? This one's around racial equality. We've got Rosa Parks, we've got Martin Luther King in the march, we've got Black Power at the Olympics, and we've got Black Lives Matter. But we've still got black men being murdered by police at a ridiculous rate. Here's some movies you might like. Suffragettes. I love this movie. The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind is absolutely a beautiful movie. Some of these are in the Murdoch Library if you don't have access to Netflix, for example. Selma is the story of Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement in the USA. And of course, Wall-E, if you can find that. There's the case against Boeing on Netflix and Grenfell Uncovered. Here's Suffragette. It's about the fight for women to get the vote. It's powerful. Here we've got a couple of songs to do with Aboriginal land rights in Australia, fighting for that. Not just Goanna, but From Little Things, Big Things Grow by Paul Kelly. You should have a look at that on YouTube. Here we've got AB Original, which is talking about January 26, or as other people call it, Australia Day, and the idea that why would you not change the date? Explicit language in this one, so be careful. Here we've got an anti-war song by John Lennon, War is Over. Absolutely beautiful song. And there's the words. In my other in my postgrad classes, I make them stand up together and sing it. We won't have time in class, but they're the words anyway. And of course, Iron Woman by Helen Reddy, and a tribute to at the ARIA Awards. It was also, yes, a song that was associated with women's liberation. And we have the words there. And now I throw in my thing about AI, and this was a study done by some researchers showing what happens when AI systems run loops. They input what they've just output into a loop and keep doing it, and no matter what they did to try to get them to come up with diverse outputs, they converged very quickly into this narrow, generic, familiar themes, and what they called it in the end visual elevator music. And I want us to remember that music is powerful, art is powerful. It's a powerful expression of society and of human feelings and beliefs, and it's uniquely human.